What a difference a year makes. Kraut was on top of the world a year ago, launching an epic takedown of edgy Sphinx to the adulation of the massasses of the skeptic community. He was heralded by his pals as the chief intellectual of the skeptic community. Things are very different today. Where did it all go wrong? I think it started when Kraut tried to dox Rage After Storm and get her fired from her job. Now, he did this because she made a video on race and intelligence that was very bad. I think it's now far enough away that we can all admit that Rage After Storm made a very bad video. Kraut makes a video entitled Artificial Outrage where he fakes apologizes for what he did, says it doesn't really matter because she wasn't getting paid as it turns out, though he didn't know that at the time. And he gets a big backlash from this because one thing you really can't do, cardinal sin of the internet, is censorship and doxing. So he got a backlash for that, and then he went dead mic for a while, for several months. Could things get any worse for Kraut? Why, yes it can. He spends months working on a series taking down the alt-right, apparently in response to the backlash he got from doxing Rage After Storm, and starts off on a video on differential K-theory in humans. Now he should be able to hit this one out of the park because it's such an obscure theory, lots of potential problems that very few people defend. Certainly I don't defend it, except against Kraut's arguments that humans are K-type, not R-type, because humans don't lay eggs and humans don't have litters of offspring. So he was thinking in terms of this absolute R-K typology instead of a continuous differential K-theory. Here, Kraut. One of the criteria for RK selections in humans is the number of offspring. The argument that blacks are more R-type than whites seems to make sense if you just compare the number of offspring that blacks and whites have, but white conservatives have more kids than blacks. There's all sorts of these little on-case arguments that you can make against the theory. I would have decided to not defend it if Kraut did this, and that would have been it. Instead, he made a giant fool of himself in his opening salvo, months in the making, against an obscure and, in my opinion, weak theory that I would have trouble defending and probably wouldn't defend against any kind of competent criticism of it. And so his opening shot against the alt-right was a big, embarrassing dud. Could things get any worse? Why, yes it can. Kraut's next video involved excitedly arguing against a correlation argument I did not make on a single blog post that compares the races to other animals with recognized subspecies. Now remember, this is supposed to be a big takedown of the alt-right, and what he's doing is he's going deep into minutiae on one post on the Alternative Hypothesis website. And as it turns out, it wasn't even an argument that I made. Kraut was literally arguing with himself, and the audience seemed to agree. He also argued that humans cannot have subspecies because subspecies cannot interbreed. This is false. Also, that a donkey is a subspecies of a horse, which is false, and that all mules are sterile, which is false. Now, these errors wouldn't be so bad in a live sitting, or if you're just shooting the shit, or just a YouTube comment. But in a prepared video, these are pretty embarrassing errors. So Kraut's second video arguing against the existence of race was another dud, and understandably, he did not try to respond any further to my response and just moved on. Could things get any worse? Why, yes it can. In Kraut's third video in this saga, Kraut dug in hard on a mechanistic demand, opposing the use of correlational studies, which he called social science. Now, I've explained elsewhere why this is ridiculous beyond belief, but one thing I forgot to mention in my video is that the molecular genetic studies Kraut cites, they infer an effect from statistics. For example, say you knock out a certain gene in mice. Well, unless the effect is so profound that there's no overlap, there's usually going to be some overlap in traits between the control group and the knockout group. And say you knock out a gene that should cause mice to gain weight when knocked out. Well, you use statistical analysis to infer whether or not the knocked out gene had any real effect. So even molecular genetics infers effects from statistical analysis. And of course, demanding the mechanism, not just the gene association, but knowledge of how the protein of that gene transcribes and acts on cells, well, this would of course render most of biology useless. So Kraut had erected a fanciful standard of evidence for anything in biology that would disqualify 99% of what we know in all of biology if this standard were held, and as it happens, the audience was not buying his ludicrously high bar either. Could things get any worse? Why, yes it can. In Kraut's fourth video to me, he claimed that I deceptively quote-mined Robert Plomin, and Kraut tripled down on his claim that you have to not only find the genes, but that you have to find the protein mechanism. Again, to no avail. He also referred to the method of epigenetics as if epigenetics was some research method or research tool, which of course calls into question his great researchers who helped him with his videos. Again, this kind of error is understandable for a YouTube comment, confusing epigenetics for some sort of methodology of molecular analysis, and it could even be understandable in a rushed video. But for a video that field-relevant scientists helped him with and approved of, this is a pretty bad error. A minor and more humorous error was when he mistakenly called an agarose gel electrophoresis a Western blot. And again, this kind of error would be like, who cares? They do look very similar, completely understandable to make that mistake. The problem is that one of Kraut's science men then went on a big, huge, irrelevant spiel on how a Western blot was done. And at the end of it, Kraut claimed that I was opposed to things like Western blots because apparently I am literally opposed to molecular genetics. And once again, the audience was not going along with Kraut's lines. In addition, this video was flagged and so it was mirrored on Sargon's channel, and of course Sargon's viewers also thought Kraut was an idiot. So now it's not just regular viewers of Kraut and Tea, but regular viewers of The Thinkery that have been exposed to Kraut's arguments, and they too find them incredibly sophistic. Could things get any worse? Why, yes it can. So Kraut held a rather hilarious fart-sniffing live stream with his scientist buddies who helped him make all of the videos we've been talking about.
That occur during the production of new proteins is referred to as the dogma of biology. No, it's not. He's called it the dogma of biology. It's called protein synthesis.
Hold on. Fucking synthesizing proteins is the dogma of biology.
Yeah.
Oh my.
Yeah, I guess.
No, when is the dogma of chemistry coming? Please.
So, yes. Kraut's credentialed crew, at least the 5 or 6 that were in that hangout, didn't know what the central dogma of molecular biology was. Now, to be fair, Sandre has said on his Twitter that he is in fact opposed to all dogma. They also mocked JF for not having completed his PhD in 2 years. For those who don't know, it typically takes 4 to 6 years to complete a PhD. Could things get any worse? Why, yes they can. We have a friend in Kraut's super secret Discord server where they have rooms organized to compile their great takedowns of JF, or of me, or of Braving Ruin and others. All hands to battle stations, KMS Buttwipe is going to take down the alt-right. And JF was given some hilarious secret recordings of them saying that the reckoning for JF would begin in 2 weeks.
Jean-François Garipier is about to get his ass handed to him, and it's going to be fucking amazing because it's going to be done by some of the most well-known and credentialed scientists of this YouTube community.
When can we expect the reckoning?
Within the next 2 weeks. Like, I've
Also
put so much effort and organization into this.
And they were working to get Thunderfoot, Concordance, and Dark Matter to bail Kraut out of the dumpster fire he's landed himself in to deliver the knockout blow against JF. Then Kraut apparently found a new scientist to come on, and this scientist told Kraut that no, you don't have to find the genes to infer heritability.
For a complex trait like intelligence, where social factors and nurturing factors are involved, you can't just merely make the claim of heritability on the basis of Mendelian laws and observation of breeding groups. You have to show the molecular genetic analysis.
And now Kraut is about to be explained that his main thesis of his third and fourth video is wrong.
The process.
I'm not sure if that's true, I must say.
Yes, it is.
It's something that was explained to us in detail with Jejone.
He also pointed out that Kraut did not know what margin of error meant, and that a weak effect is not the same thing as within the margin of error.
Well, here we have the recordings that shows that this actually comes from Sandre. Listen to Sandre defending a wrong view of the margin of error.
The paper says it's in the margins of error?
It's two papers actually. One original paper and a follow-up paper. And in both papers, they say themselves, the result is equivalent to about 1 month of schooling or 2%.
And when they report that result, Sandre, it means that it's outside of the margin of error. Now, you guys need to understand, Kraut is currently with Sandre. He's talking to new scientists on his team. One of these scientists being copying our leaker. He's talking to them, and the new scientist is trying to explain to Sandre that he got it wrong with the margin of error. And Sandre is acting all smug, trying to make the case that the results were within the margin of error, when the new scientist is like, no, by the way, you got it wrong, JF is right.
Now, the thing is, when you have such a small result, you have to conclude that's within the margin of error because it's so small.
Yeah, but it depends on the...
It doesn't matter what your mathematical calculations show, because if you have a result that's that small, it is too insignificant to say anything which is of any determining factor. And not only that, the main point itself, though, is, and this is a greater point. Yeah, no, you don't understand. You don't understand. We went through these papers with Jajone, and Jajone was very clear about this.
That Kraut now has a guy who came on and says you don't have to find the genes. And now this recording was made public. How will Kraut continue with his farcically high standard of evidence that you have to find the genes to infer any genetic effects? Kraut was found plotting like a retarded villain and found that one of his trusted scientists is saying that his central argument on his you gotta find the genes methodology was completely wrong, and this was all made public by JF. Well, could things get any worse? Why, yes they can. Following JF's upload, the crew of KMS Dipshit conspired to report JF's video, but they did it in the same server that JF's audio came from in the first place. Not that taking the video down would be a good look anyway, they didn't even have the sense to organize the flagging somewhere other than the server that the leaked audio in that very video came from. Could things get any worse? Why, yes they can. The two people that are the chief targets of Kraut, JF and me, are people who do not even label themselves alt-right. On the Alternative Hypothesis website, which used to have multiple people writing for it, we had worked on an article about the Jews, about how Jews actually aren't that bad worldwide, and defending Jews within the context of the alt-right. Now, we were going to publish it, but then American Renaissance said they wanted to publish it, and they wanted it to have to be their exclusive thing. And we were okay with that because it would give more exposure on American Renaissance. And they spent months making stylistic edits, but then shelved the project when the 2016 election came up with the intent to return to it later. But later came and went, and they never returned to it, and we sort of forgot about it ourselves. But here it is, the Alternative Hypothesis website's defense of the Jews, not written by me, but endorsed by me. And the term alternative hypothesis is not a play on alt-right. It is the name of a group blog that I started with some people back in 2011, before the alt-right was really a thing, and we decided to reboot it, and we just picked the same name, and now it's just me. I have also been saying since 2008 that Nazis are bad, okay, and are actually in opposition to pan-Europeanism. They're anti-Slavic, and that the Nazis weren't even particularly pro-white, no more than France or the UK or any other European country at the time. In addition, Nazi racial thinking was completely at odds with what anthropologists in the West thought was what today would be called race realism, and something that a majority of anthropologists worldwide still think. Heck, I'm even against the use of Confederate flags. And JF? Well, he's just a biologist that's having fun making fun of your videos. So, on top of all the stuff we've been talking about, all of the dumpster fire that Kraut has been giving us, top of all this, he's not even really interacting with the true alt-right. Could things get any worse? Well, stay tuned. There are more fun audio leaks coming from KMS Buttercreamer, and I'm going to shift from reacting to Kraut to going on the offensive myself, and we'll see how well they can play defense. We'll see how well they can respond on short notice to whatever topic I choose to talk about. And maybe Kraut's academics will finally respond. What a difference a year makes.